82 and 70. I mean, it's nice that it was over 500, but yeah, we'll we'll see. But yeah, the NL Central's so competitive.
It
Just
just when you look at
unfair.
the moves they made at the deadline, though, getting Archer and getting Keone Kela, it felt like they had a bigger plan going into this free agency, and like free agency is moving very slow because everybody's waiting for Harper and Machado,
Yeah.
but I definitely expected them to do something bigger, and maybe they still will. Um, but you just have like you feel like they know that there's like a window of competition because they've given themselves a window with that Archer deal. Like they basically said, okay, here's 3 years that we're going to have a window. Um, and I don't know. I just feel like they have to kind of go. I mean, the Pirates are never going to go all in. I just don't see it happening. But they kind of, with the window that they've given themselves, have to do something to move towards going all in. Not this
Yeah.
1 foot in, 1 foot out crap where we're just going to have an unlimited window, quote unquote window, even though it's really not a window of competition.
Well, hopefully they learned from when they did have that window in 2013, 14, and 15.
Right?
That 2016, they just that off season. Just I'm still angry about that. The Ryan Vogel song.
Right. Yeah. I mean, as Pirate fans, if you're going to be mad about something, I mean, Pirate fans, if you want to call them that, the ones that just overreact to everything and scream nothing's wallet in your face every time
Yeah,
they do
yeah,
something. If you're really going to complain about something, that's probably the best thing to point to because they're coming off 98 wins and they decide to go into the next season with the rotation that they did with three guys who had no business
right,
being in it, and then
right.
Garrett Cole
That
and
was
Liriano.
yeah because they traded Neil Walker, which was I partially I think a baseball trade. I mean, I forget who they
John
got. Oh,
Neese. Yeah,
Neese.
they
Who I
saw it
mean,
as a one-for-one trade that
yeah,
they
it was
felt like,
basically a baseball move.
yeah,
But then yeah, they Burnett retires and they replace him with Vogelsong. It's like they just thought that uh, they could just keep going instead of trying to build on that. So yeah, that did not sit well with me. Um, the next one is the Steelers losing to the Jaguars in the
mhm.
playoffs. That was, especially the way it happened. Just no defense at all. I mean, if the Steelers just had a little bit of defense, they just one or two stops, they would have won that game. I mean, and we would have been saying that was one of the greatest comebacks ever because the offense was amazing and the Jaguars' defense was great, but the offense was really good. It's just the defense was so bad.
Right. Yeah, I mean, they beat us in the regular season last year too, so it's supposed to be like a
Yeah.
revenge game. Um, and you look at the biggest difference to me on that defense, like Sean Spence had no business starting. He had no business being
Right.
on the team, but especially starting. I mean, they pulled him off his couch because he was familiar with the system and brought
Yeah.
him in.
Yeah.
And he graded out as like the worst linebacker in football when he played last year. So, um, yeah, very frustrating game to watch because we saw. I'm pretty sure that like that was the best second half a quarterback has ever played in postseason history,
Oh my
and it didn't
God.
matter.
Yeah. That's what we would be talking about. We would be talking about like what a legendary game that was for good, not for oh my god, we lost that way. So yeah, that really and that was such a disappointing season. They went 13-3, and they were expecting to. Tomlin said they were gonna play the Patriots, and oh man,
Right, yeah, there was this overwhelming feeling that they just looked past that game against the Jaguars.
right,
Um,
right,
and like you said, I mean, to score 42 points and lose is just crazy. AJ Boye, their corner, had given up like one touchdown on the season, and Antonio scored two against them in that game.
yeah,
Like the Jaguars defense, who was start to finish the best defense in football last year, just got torched, and it didn't matter because the Steelers defense got torched worse by a terrible quarterback.
yeah. The next one, Penguins losing to the Capitals in the playoffs. I think it was just a case of them being tired. They won two cups in a row. You can't play all those games, and maybe they just got tired, or maybe just I mean, I was kind of not happy for the Caps, but you know They did deserve it, and it was the same situation, the Caps and the Penguins, as the Steelers and the Patriots. It's like we beat them so over and over and over again, and they finally got their win.
Right, yeah, you felt like it had to happen at some point, and if it was going to happen, it was going to be the third year. The Penguins, like you said, so beat up. Chris Letang playing through the injury that he had. Derek Brassard playing with essentially a torn groin. Everybody has bumps and bruises, but those things with how many hockey games a lot of those guys had played the 2 years prior, it was bound to happen at some point. And the Penguins, they forced them into overtime in Game 6. If the Penguins won that game, who knows what happens in a Game 7?
Right. Right. It was they could have gone the Penguins' way again.
Yeah, it was, and it probably, who knows what happens, but that would have been so poetic for the Pens to once again beat them in the Game 7.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, it's very comparable to the Steelers-Patriots because they're finally getting over that hump. But that happened in the playoffs, obviously. This happened during the season, but I don't know. Maybe that means the Steelers are going to win the Super Bowl this year because of that.
Could be.
Just like the Capitals rode that to once they beat the Penguins, I said that they're going to win the Cup.
Yeah.
I just felt like it had to be their year if that was going to happen. And they're like you said, I can't stand that Tom Wilson won a Cup, but for a lot of guys on that team, if they weren't, it's like I hate the team, but I don't hate them as individuals. It's not. I like seeing Ovi win a Cup.
It was
one of the greatest players.
It was nice seeing Ovi win because the knock on him was he doesn't really care. Oh, he's Russian. He doesn't even care about the playoffs. He just wants to go back to Russia. He's not really dedicated and all that crap. And it's like, really, he is maybe the second best player of this generation, or with Crosby and maybe even definitely the best goal scorer. So yeah, it was nice, and he definitely and nobody partied as hard as that dude.
Right, yeah. And like you said, honestly, I think he is the best goal scorer. Well, he's the best goal scorer of this era for sure. I think you could argue all time just because of how much better the goaltending is now.
Right,
and the fact that he scored a lot of goals through the dead puck era when nobody was scoring goals. The game's kind of opened up a little bit more, but the goaltenders are much better now than they were, back in Lemieux and Gretzky's days. If you watch highlights from back then, I always tell my dad this, and I got my dad to finally agree with me, that the goaltenders were just essentially a guy that they decided couldn't skate as well and they just threw pads on. Now it's actually like a craft that people perfect.
And it seems like now the equipment they use is a lot different. It's like
right, yeah. That's the thing. Like even just from the last couple of years, they've made goalie pads smaller to try to increase goal scoring, and it has a little bit. But like I said, the goalies are just so much more skilled now.
Yeah. The second one I have is the whole trading Garrett Cole, trading Kutch, and the fan. It was like a civil war broke out among Pirates fans, or basically just Pittsburghers. I've never seen anything like that. People were so angry at Nutting, and it still continues. And I don't know what the attendance dip was. I think it was like 20% or something like that. But people were so angry. There was a quote unquote boycott. Man, it just got ugly, and it continues to be ugly.
Right. Yeah. I don't know that Bob Nutting can really do anything right. In Pittsburgh anyway. The fans are always going to hate him regardless. I don't know what is going to have to happen. Even if they won a World Series, people would say it was in spite of him. Right. But for me, as a Pirate fan, you can't get too attached to players. And that was probably the hardest for me with McCutchen. I love Garrett Cole too, but I wasn't opposed to them trading either of those guys. I actually said that they should have traded McCutchen before. I felt like they waited too long, and that's why we saw the return that we did. Kyle Crick's a pretty good reliever, but for a guy that's a former MVP and 6-time All-Star, you would expect a little bit more than him and prospect that might not even be a major leaguer. I don't know, Brian Reynolds. He's got an okay ceiling. He was a second-round pick who kind of fell a little bit. Was actually projected to go in the first originally. So I don't know what to make of him, but yeah, he definitely expected a bigger return if McCutchen was going to be traded, just based off the name more than anything. I know that his play had declined, which is why, like I said, I was okay with trading him. I actually would have traded him the prior season. But I get it, and honestly, I didn't see the trade coming when it did because they didn't trade him the prior season. I felt like he was just going to play out his contract and, make it kind of like a farewell tour at PNC the whole season. Kind of like we saw, David Ortiz walk away and they had a farewell tour. Now, he was retiring, so it was different. But still, the Pirate fans would have just known, okay, we have McCutchen for this year and then that's it. Let's treat it like that. With the Garrett Cole thing, see, the problem is I don't know how we don't know how other teams in baseball viewed him. So to look at the package and say this is too much or this is too little, Garrett Cole, when you look at just the stuff, is a top-tier pitcher. The problem is he only showed that in Pittsburgh for one season. And that's probably a lot of that goes on the Pirates to me because look how many guys have got, like, look at him and Morton, just for example, that were on the exact same team. Yeah. Guys just find success elsewhere, and we've also seen guys find success with the Pirates that haven't with their other teams. So it goes both ways. But Garrett Cole just wasn't a fit here, I don't think. And Pirate fans hated him when he was here, so I really don't understand how you can hate him when he's here, and then when they trade him, be upset about it.
The thing is, it's what they got for him. They could have done the we'll trade him for some 19-year-old who is projected to be here in 2021, but no, they got people that were ready, like, now or close. Mm-hmm. And I think that I heard, like, well, they're really trying, they really think they could contend now, or at least they're playing for now, not for the future. So it's not like a rebuild. They were actually they were just baseball deals, and I think that it came to be that. But then the problem was, it's like, okay, then who's going to play outfield? And it really looked bad until the Dickerson trade. And that, to me, turned everything around. I don't know if that was the plan. Probably was. If it wasn't him, it probably would have been somewhere else. But that Dickerson deal was huge.
Right, yeah. I mean, he kind of just fell into their lap. Who would have thought that the Rays would DFA him coming off the season that he had? He did. Now, he's notoriously a much better first-half hitter than a second-half hitter. But still, the season that he put together with the Rays, and he was an all-star, the Rays felt like they could replace him, so they made that move, just like the Pirates felt like they could replace Garrett Cole and Kutch. And Dickerson comes here and has a fantastic season, wins a Gold Glove, which was the knock on him. He was primarily a DH because he couldn't play defense, and I think that kind of lit a fire in him, and he decided he was going to win a Gold Glove last year. As far as the Cole trade, they end up getting Michael Feliz, who I really liked coming over in that trade, was terrible last year. Right. Actually didn't even spend most of the season in Pittsburgh. But Musgrove was, was a fringe starter bullpen guy with the Astros in their World Series run. And he came here and looked more like a middle of the rotation option for us.
I thought he was really good. Terrible in Houston.
Yeah,
I think his ERA was like around 5 or something like that. Yeah, he was very good. I remember, I do a lot of fantasy baseball, and people were saying, Musgrove's going to be really good. I'm like, what are you talking about? And it turns out he was.
Yeah, he had a pretty solid year for us. Once he was able to come back, he actually missed the first little bit of the season, recovering from a shoulder injury. And then, we got Colin Moran, too, who's, hopefully the starting third baseman for a period of time. I mean, we have Cabrian Hayes in Double-A right now, and that's probably the future of that position. But Moran, he had a pretty up-and-down season. I think that people wanted to see a little bit more power, thought it would translate well to PNC Park. But, the new hitting coach that we hired, Eckstein, really likes his swing. He thinks that, there's a lot of untapped potential there that Branson wasn't getting out of him, which would be to the surprise of nobody. So hopefully that does happen. And then Jason Martin, who was the last piece of that, actually moved up from Double-A to Triple-A towards the end of last year. So he'll be in spring training this year with the Pirates, I would assume, and we'll get a little bit of a better look at him then.
Yep. And for me, the number one story was the Le'Veon Bell saga. nobody, including the Steelers, thought that he would sit out the whole year. And I don't know if that was the plan, but wow. I just remember that week of Labor